A Dr. Oz exclusive. Former Vice President Dick Cheney.
I'd always assumed that death was imminent.
His personal battle with heart disease.
Your public image, sometimes angry, reactive, could that have played a role?
That's a tough question.
The pain he secretly endured.
Some people were sorry I got a heart. I wrote a letter of resignation.
And the alleged controversy surrounding his heart transplant.
Was there any truth to the fact that the Vice President got a heart faster than he should have?
Coming up next on Dr. Oz.
For almost as long as he has served at the highest levels of government, former Vice President Dick Cheney has been one of the most famous heart patients in the world. He has survived an astonishing 5 heart attacks, and just last year, a heart transplant. Now, for the first time ever, he shares the very personal story of his 35-year battle with heart disease.
Dick Cheney is one of the great survival stories in American politics, but even more so in the annals of American medicine. In his revealing new book, Heart, Cheney writes about his 5 heart attacks and the extraordinary doctors and medical advances that kept him alive for 35 years with chronic progressive heart disease. Heart disease ran deep on both sides of Cheney's family, and he was just 37 when he suffered his first heart attack running for Congress. Even as he thrived as the ultimate power player in Washington, a witness and participant in history, heart disease stalked him. Cheney had heart attacks in 1984, 1988, and in 2000, just 2 weeks after the election that made him vice president. But as Dick Cheney's disease progressed, so did science and technology. And cutting-edge angioplasty, stents, a pacemaker, and defibrillator all helped him survive the grim odds against him. But finally, after suffering his 5th heart attack 3 years ago, in end-stage heart failure, Cheney was put on the transplant list. It would take one more technological miracle, the mechanical heart known as the LVAD, to keep him alive for the 20 months it would take to find his donor heart.
Please welcome Vice President Dick Cheney. Thank you very much. A lot of applause. Now, speaking as someone who's done quite a few heart transplants, you look really, really good.
Well, I've only done one, but it was a beauty.
You feel full speed?
It's amazing, doctor. It's you go through 35 years of heart disease, and gradually over time, of course, you lose capability, and then all of a sudden you've got a transplant, and all of the stuff that went with 35 years of heart disease, the old heart, the stents, the implantable defibrillator, all of that is gone, and the only thing that's left that shows I was ever a heart patient is a scar where they opened my chest up 3 times. But everything else was brand new heart, and it's nothing short of a miracle.
35 years ago, when you had your first heart attack,
right,
heart transplants were very, very rare. What happened after that first event? How were you able to fight back?
Well, initially, it was a mild heart attack, but I'd been doing everything wrong. I was 37 years old, thought I was going to live forever. So I quit smoking.
Yeah.
Cold turkey, never had another cigarette. Watched my diet, began to exercise regularly, walking and so forth.
So you do all these things, and yet you have another heart attack, and then another one, and another one, and another one.
Right.
At what point did you feel that you were a ticking time bomb, that nothing would really make a difference?
I never really felt that way. And I asked my doctor, I said, Rick Davis was his name, an internist in Cheyenne. He said, do I have to quit? And he looked at me, he said, oh, hell, Dick, hard work never killed anybody. Now, that's what I remember. It's
right.
Also, to be fair to Rick, he also said what causes stress is spending your life doing something you don't want to be doing, something you just hate. But I loved my work so much, had such interesting jobs, I couldn't wait to get back to the job after I'd had an episode. You know?
Well, let me, if I can, challenge you a little bit about this issue of the role of stress. So there's a very poignant part of the book. And by the way, this is a very well-written document. I did not expect to like it, I have to admit it. I really thought it was just going to be a diary of a couple of things that happened. But there were some insights you shared. I'm going to touch on some of them that were fascinating. In one point, you mentioned that you passed out in the halls of Congress. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're a known heart patient. You report that your colleagues apparently just walked right by you on their way to whatever they were doing. It's a highly competitive environment. Did you ever feel you were a second-class citizen because your ticker wasn't up to snuff?
No, the basic approach I took was I didn't think of myself as a patient or a victim.
Now, your public image has been of an individual sometimes angry, reactive. Could that have played a role?
Well, that's not the way I saw my image. I thought I was a rather warm, fuzzy, sweet fella.
That's right.
Lovable. Sometimes referred to as Darth Vader.
All right. So you're a smart man, very thoughtful about people around you as well as your own needs. You were clearly an assassination target, but being a heart patient makes you that much easier to assassinate. The defibrillator, good example. And what precautions did you take because of your heart to make sure that you were not felled by an assassin?
One of the things we're concerned about was it was programmable remotely. And the possibility that somebody on a rope line someplace or in a crowd could get close enough to me to be able to set off the built-in defibrillator and cause my death. And so we disabled that piece of the technology. We had the company, in effect, build a special model without that in it.
You changed the AICD so they couldn't remotely turn it on?
Correct.
It's like a Homeland episode.
Well, Homeland followed us.
That's right.
Came on later on, but later on Homeland, they did in fact have an episode where the Vice President of the United States was killed by a terrorist manipulating his implantable defibrillator.
How do you like that? Do you get a creative credit for that at all?
No. It was, it validated our concerns, and I knew enough about what we had to do with my case so that I knew that was a credible episode.
Now, you did agree, after some convincing, to run for vice president.
I did.
2000.
I said no.
A couple times.
Yeah, a couple times for.
They prevail upon you. You campaign, you win. Several weeks into the recount, you suffer your fourth heart attack.
Right.
And all the stress of that happening around you, you have this fourth heart attack, which is sort of forgotten by many. Did you ever consider at that point stepping down?
No, and heart attack is. It was as mild as a heart attack could be, and you could still call it a heart attack. That is to say, what I had was a small buildup in one of my arteries that was easily fixed with a stent.
Well, heart attacks are like being pregnant. Either you are or you aren't.
Either you are or you aren't. I'm an expert. I've had a number of them. But it was a relatively mild event. What I did do, once I became vice president, I was concerned about the possibility that I could have a bad heart attack or stroke, still be alive, still be in office, but unable to function. Yeah. And I wrote a letter of resignation in March of 2001. We'd only been in office 2 months. And with Dave Addington, my then counsel, I basically resigned the vice presidency in a letter addressed to the Secretary of State, which is traditionally how that's done. But then I gave the letter to Dave and told him to hold it. And if I ever reached the point where I was incapacitated, if the occasion ever arose, he was to take that letter and give it to the president. And then it would be up to the president to submit it to the Secretary of State. And if he decided that's what he wanted to do, that would vacate the office. And he'd be free under the 25th Amendment to appoint a replacement for me. I'd be out. And it was a contingency that I thought we needed to take care of. Only Dave Addington, my lawyer, and I knew about it, and the president, I told him.
2010, you have your fifth heart attack.
Right.
Did you begin to feel at that time that, in fact, time itself was running out?
I did. I'd always assumed that at some point, when my time came, it would be because of heart disease, and that we'd run out of the technology in time, and that death was imminent.
The most emotional part of this book for me was a segment where you talk about this tradition you have in your family. It's called having your sale.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love, we can talk a little bit about this tradition, by the way, is your father went through. He was a World War II veteran, not an emotional man as you describe him, yet he was tearful as he basically sold off all the materials in his life because he knew death was coming.
Exactly.
What was it like for your father? And what was it like for you to watch your father go through his final sale?
Well, it was clear he was approaching the end of his days. And he knew it, he felt it, and he was bound and determined to take care of it himself. I told him, I said, Dad, don't worry about that stuff. We'll take care of it when the time comes. Wouldn't hear of it. It was something he had to do at the end of his life. And to say, my sister, after the sale, found him sitting in the house crying. I'd never seen my dad cry in his life. So it was a unique moment and a very, very personal one.
Was there a point where you saw your father and you were in the same situation?
Well, the time that I saw him most after I'd done the implant of the LVAD, the left ventricular assist device that we've got an example of here, I was very sick. I'd been sick when we went into the surgery. I'd had pneumonia. I'd been on the respirator for some time, lost 40 pounds. And as I came out of that process one day, I was in a wheelchair, and they wheeled me past a mirror about 2 weeks after I'd had this operation. I looked in the mirror, and what I saw was my dad just before he died, age 84. I looked exactly like him anyway, as his son, but that's exactly what I saw was him.
After 5 heart attacks, Dick Cheney should have been dead. The only path that remained, a heart transplant, but it would take 20 months to find a donor heart. When we come back, Dick Cheney's life and death decision, and the doctor who saved his life. I've been a heart surgeon 20 years, and in my entire life, I've never heard of anyone who survived 35 years with heart attacks.
I'm Dr. Jonathan Reiner, and I've been Dick Cheney's doctor since 1998. And it struck me that in Dick Cheney's life, there has been a medical answer to what in the past would have stopped people just as he needed it.
So an LVAD is a piggyback pump that can serve as a crutch to a failing heart to keep you alive.
When the Vice President underwent insertion of the LVAD, he was probably hours away from death.
Dick Cheney, without question, owes his survival to these modern medical advances.
My father used to say that it's one thing to have a disease, but quite another to let the disease have you. And when you look at the life of the Vice President, he's never let the disease have him.
Vice President Dick Cheney credits his team of doctors for extending his life. He believes one doctor in particular, cardiologist Dr. Jonathan Reiner, actually saved his life by making sure he got access to the most important cutting-edge medications, procedures, and devices. Dr. Jonathan Reiner is here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So if someone called me with a patient, let's say it wasn't the Vice President, but just an average patient, and this medical history, 5 heart attacks, quadruple bypass, stents, defibrillator, high doses of multiple medications just to keep him alive, it would be a fairly daunting task. With all that stacked against him, are you surprised that Mr. Cheney is still alive 35 years after his first heart attack?
By nature, I'm an optimist. But I think, when I look at the Vice President's history, what I think it really illustrates is how far we've come in cardiovascular medicine. When the Vice President's dad was sick and dying, there was nothing that could be done. But that's just not the case anymore.
You spoke very poignantly about the reality that you're watching dominoes drop as you're witnessing your friend and the Vice President crumble slowly. Yeah. What was that like?
It was hard. There's this myth that docs have a firewall, sort of between their emotions and the science and the medical aspect. If you're supposed to have that, I've never been very good at. So it was hard. It was unquestionably hard.
Or you're running out of options. One of the last things you could have done, probably the last thing, was something called an LVAD. It looks like this, folks. It's a left ventricular assist device. And it's a machine. It's basically a turbine in here that sucks blood out of the heart and then pumps it back out. At this point, you're in a crisis situation. Why did you decide to resort to putting a mechanical heart pump into the Vice President?
Because I wanted him to live. And there was a window to do it. At the end, the window was closing very, very, very rapidly.
So these pumps are the first internal machines to replace an organ. And I took over our program when I just finished my training, and my job was to marry these machines to the men. So let me share with you and everybody, just so we're clear, what these pumps really are. When you have heart failure, you have a big, bloated heart. It looks like this. I mean, it's a lot wide. It takes up the entire chest. And as it gets big, it's basically failing like a balloon about to pop. These VADs are inserted by putting one side into the tip of the heart. The pump is down there. You insert the other side into the tube, the aortic, that normally takes blood out of the heart, and that shrinks the heart down dramatically. It becomes a piggyback support system. Then you have to have a power supply. You have a little battery you put on the outside. So the blood's draining out of the heart, being pumped forward, and you're recreating what a normal heart would have done for us. And this LVAD buys time. So, Dr. Reiner, how long did you anticipate the vice president would have to stay on this pump before you could find a heart for him?
My intent was to bridge him as long as we had to until we can find an organ. And that turned out to be 20 months.
So I brought you some show and tell. You don't have to partake, but here's some purple gloves in case you desire it. What I'm going to show is fairly graphic. It's several different hearts, one healthy and two that are not so healthy. So this is what hearts look like when they get damaged. This is a normal heart. You see it's about the size of your fist. It's an elegant structure. Looks like a conch shell almost. This is the heart of somebody who actually had a heart attack. You can see it's a bit larger in part because muscle's thicker, probably from high blood pressure. But you notice this muscle is robust and brownish. Mm-hmm. And you see how this part here is white and scarred? That's what a heart attack looks like. So this heart muscle is normal from a blood vessel that had not been closed off. And this heart muscle was damaged and killed ultimately by a coronary vessel that had closed. I don't know if you've ever held a heart, if you have.
I never have.
Well, if you're a first time.
I'm sure John has.
Now, John has
Notice how the muscle starts to thin.
Mm-hmm. It does.
And the architecture of the heart is elegantly designed. The heart doesn't squeeze like this. It twists the blood out like you would wring a towel of water.
Right.
So when you have a heart attack, and each of the 5 heart attacks you had would create scars, some like this, some better, some worse. But these scars prevent that wringing. So it's like trying to wring water out of a towel when one hand can't move. It becomes really inefficient. And at a certain point, for you was probably that last heart attack, you lose just enough that that one hand can't twist at all. And you see, folks, how much bigger this is than even the heart that was damaged by 1 heart attack. If you add up 5 heart attacks, you end up with an appearance that can be like this. These tubes would take the blood out of the heart. This patient died with their LVAD. And this muscle is scarred and damaged at many levels. And not to go through it all, but when you feel the weight of this compared to the weight of this, I don't know if you can verbalize that.
Sure. Well, that's a bad heart.
It's a bad heart.
And I'll tell you
much heavier.
The vice president's heart, when it was explanted, was larger than this organ.
It was larger than this?
It was the biggest heart I've ever seen.
So what was it like when you woke up the following morning with a new heart for the first time in 35 years, a fully functional heart?
John was there and Alan Spear, one of the heart surgeons, and they told me it's completed, it worked beautifully, the new heart took right off, and my immediate reaction was, I said, "Hot damn." That was those are the words. That's what came immediately to mind. And also, though, there's a deep sense of gratitude for the donor and what the donor did, and the donor's family. It has to be. I don't know them. You don't come into contact with them, but it has to be a terrible moment for them from the standpoint they've just lost a loved one, some terrible tragedy that's made it possible for you to receive the heart. I was ecstatic. My family was. All of a sudden, instead of facing the prospect of imminent death, you're looking at who knows how many additional years of life, all because of the decision that individual made to be a donor. And I can't say enough in terms of my personal debt, gratitude for that. The other thing I say is, if you're not a donor, you ought to sign up. You may need one someday.
Of all the things that you've done, what's your legacy? What would you want it to be?
Well, that's a tough question. Well, we have a competition in Wyoming called the One-Shot Antelope Contest every year. And it's held in conjunction with the tribe, the Shoshone tribe there in central Wyoming. And they have a ceremony where they give each hunter a name, an Indian name. And my Indian name was Two Heart.
Two Heart?
Two Heart. And this was just a couple of months ago when we had that competition. And that might not be a bad epithet for my headstone. Too hard.
Too hard, Cheney. It's a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Great to see you, Doc.